This is a story about a promise, a really important one. For years, the United Kingdom told its transgender citizens, "You're safe, you're protected by the law." And then, in what felt like an instant, that promise was shattered. We're going to look at how that happened and what it feels like when the security you were guaranteed is just pulled away. So how did we get here? How did the UK, a country that seemed to be a leader on trans rights, suddenly do a complete 180? We're going to explore how that reassuring phrase, "you are protected," twisted into something that for many now feels, well, more like a warning.
You know, this huge national story really boils down to a single moment. It didn't start in Parliament or in a courtroom. It started in a hospital changing room in Fife, Scotland, with a confrontation between two people, a nurse named Sandy Peggy and a doctor, Beth Upton.
That one belief, that one sentence, was the spark. Sandy Peggy confronted Dr. Upton, who is a trans woman, and that argument quickly escalated into a formal complaint. But it didn't stop there. It spiraled into a massive, high-profile employment tribunal, not just against the health service, but against Dr. Upton herself.
And it did not stay a local dispute for long. Suddenly, it was a national symbol. It drew in huge names, like the author J.K. Rowling. And just like that, a workplace argument became a full-blown proxy battle in the UK's increasingly nasty culture war over trans rights. Okay, so to really understand why this case sent such shockwaves, we have to rewind. How was a situation like this even possible when UK law was meant to prevent exactly this from happening? Let's look at the legal shield that was supposed to protect people. For more than 50 years, the direction of travel seemed crystal clear. I mean, you can see it right here on this timeline. From the founding of support groups to landmark court cases, it looked like a one-way street, a steady, progressive journey towards greater legal recognition and protection. And the Equality Act of 2010, well, that was seen as the destination. This was the promise, written down and passed into law. It made gender reassignment a protected characteristic. This was supposed to be the bedrock, the legal foundation for that feeling of safety and security.
And for a little while, the official data seemed to back that up. In the years just after the act passed, police recorded 555 hate crimes motivated by trans identity. Now, of course, any number is too high, but it did reinforce this idea that, on paper at least, society was becoming a safer place.
But here's the thing. There was a huge disconnect between the promise of the law and what people were actually living through. A study from 2012, right in the middle of this supposed era of progress, showed a really grim picture. The data is stark. Overwhelming rates of depression, self-harm, and discrimination. The law was clearly not the whole story.
So, what went wrong? How did that fragile sense of security, built on a legal promise, begin to just unravel? Well, the public and political moods started to shift, and boy, did it shift fast.
The data here tells you everything you need to know. A university study looked at the British press and found that in 2012, words like row, clash, or fury appeared next to the word trans just 13 times. Fast forward to 2018 to 19, and that number had exploded to 920. The media narrative had completely changed to one of conflict and controversy.
So was this just a coincidence? Well, according to critics and analysis from places like Novara Media, the answer is a hard no. They argued this was a deliberately manufactured moral panic, driven by everything you see here, from political opportunism to well-funded lobby groups and a media that was happy to play along.
All of this cultural noise, this firestorm, eventually landed in the highest court in the land. And in one single seismic ruling, the very meaning of legal protection was flipped on its head. This was it. This was the moment the promise was officially, legally broken.
And right here, this slide shows you the total 180-degree turn. For years, the understanding was that if you had a gender recognition certificate, or GRC, you were legally seen as your affirmed gender, full stop. But then the Supreme Court ruled that, for the Equality Act, the word sex now means biological sex assigned at birth, and a GRC doesn't change that. Just like that, a cornerstone of legal recognition was gone.
The reaction was swift and furious. Human Rights Watch called the decision severely regressive. The British Medical Association didn't mince words either, condemning it as exclusionary and, as you can see here, biologically nonsensical.
Okay, so that's all the legal stuff. But what does a decision like this actually mean for a real person, just trying to live their life day to day? What is the human cost when a court redefines your rights? It means that everyday life, things you and I take for granted, like just going out, suddenly becomes a strategic mission. Advocacy groups now have to issue guidance like this, turning a simple act into a series of defensive steps. A life of freedom becomes a life of calculated risk.
And that brings us right back to Dr. Beth Upton. For her, this wasn't some abstract legal debate. It became her brutal daily reality. The country had told her, "Be yourself, we have your back." And instead, she was dragged through a public tribunal, faced constant harassment, and had her most private, intimate medical history picked apart for public entertainment. It was a vicious, cruel stripping of her dignity, the absolute opposite of the protection she was promised.
So where does that leave us? The UK's journey leaves us with this really profound and deeply uncomfortable question. When the promise of protection is broken, when the media turns against you, and when the courts literally redefine your rights away, what's left? What protects a person's basic dignity?